Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Jeremy Saltan, and this is the first event that we're doing with Naftali Bennett in English. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you. I see that we have more and more people coming in, so we're definitely, even though we're Anglos, there are a lot of people here that are in Israeli time. So tonight, the way it's going to work is I'm going to say a few opening remarks. Naftali's going to come and he's going to do the same. And then afterwards, we're going to be able to get to your questions. And then I'll take a few questions that Naftali didn't get to. And then afterwards, I will summarize and then we will finish off the night. Just to give you a rough estimation, I think ready by, I would say, 10 o'clock, maybe 10:15 the latest, we should all be out of here. So let me just do one more thing here. I put a few co-hosts here so they could help me with the technical difficulties. So everybody, here we are in election number 4. And I got to say, I saw a lot of the questions that were posted earlier, whether it was on Facebook or it was on WhatsApp. And a lot of people were asking, instead of specific issues, they're asking, what are we doing here? Why are we here in a 4th election? And I think that that's perhaps the most important question. Why is it that we're going to the polls for a 4th time in less than 2 years? We're all, instead of being in a nice place or someone's house, doing this event over Zoom. This is going to be an election campaign that is different compared to all previous ones. And yet, here we are. The reason we're here is because we have a current leadership that is just not managing the current crisis well. We know that for those of us who were able to send our kids for the first time today, that over the last few weeks, we've been waiting. We've been waiting, sometimes going to sleep, not knowing if our kids need to go to school in the morning or not. A lot of us who are stuck at home don't know, is our place of work going to open up? Is it going to remain closed? Things have just not been put out in a clear fashion. We go into one lockdown for one reason. We go out of it for a second reason. One day, the issue is the amount of hospital beds. The next day, it's an issue of the amount of serious who are ill. Then a third day, the issue is the overall amount of those who are sick with COVID-19. Sometimes what matters is the daily numbers. Sometimes it's the 3-day rolling numbers. Sometimes it's the weekly numbers. What we have is a situation where it's not always clear to the Israeli citizen why it is that the current policy is in place or the parameters under which we would be able to end up ending whatever lockdown or closure or restrictions we're dealing with to be able to go ahead and start to get our lives again. What Naftali Bennett did was something that nobody else did, and that was actually put a plan on the table. He did this already during the first wave when he was defense minister. I think all of us who have lived through this time can definitely see that there was a big difference between what we lived through in the first wave compared to what we ended up seeing in the second and third waves. And perhaps if the government of Israel would have actually read the plan that defense minister of the time, Naftali Bennett, put on the table, we would have been able to actually prevent these additional waves, these additional closures. We would have been able to save thousands of Israeli lives and perhaps be able to also keep our economy from having to go into a state of complete chaos. So what is it that we're doing here? As I said, we're in a 4th election in the middle of Corona because we had a government that said that they would be able to put all of their stuff that they were arguing over the first 3 elections to the side and then go ahead and actually try to help Israel out of what we were dealing with. Instead, we got a second wave. We ended up getting a third wave after that. And it's not clear to everybody if what we're going through that we're supposedly getting out of is the 3rd lockdown, the 4th lockdown, maybe it's the 3rd and a half lockdown that we're getting out of. We know that we tried the lockdown with the schools being open. Then we had this lockdown without the schools being open. Then we had the lockdown continuing without the schools being open. And it seems now that, again, the schools are open for, once again, some of the grades, but the workplace is not open. We just don't know. And we also don't know in terms of many of the things the government has put out in terms of what is the actual plan to be able to bring us to a place where we can get our lives again. Naftali Bennett, after leaving his time as defense minister, put pen to paper and literally wrote the book on how to defeat the virus. And again, once again, they chose not to go ahead and do anything with that. They chose to go ahead and to just, if you will, wing it or improvise, as many here in this state feel that that is the way to go about things. And unfortunately, like I said, we ended up seeing what happened as a result. One of the things that a lot of us have seen is definitely what happened in terms of the airport, in which, unlike most countries, which realized that you should have testing before you came in to the country, or testing after you came into the country, there was a time where you could land from a plane, and then you could actually get on the train and go home and then put yourself in isolation. So again, you just have so many loopholes. And while all of us, of course, here in Israel were locked down, we had all of these new mutations being brought in without any testing. I'm going to just see if Naftali is here yet. No, I think he's not here yet. So I will continue until he does. But I'll tell you that what we ended up going through this entire time period is just something that could have been avoided. And the question of this election really is, who is the leader who can successfully take us out of the crisis that was caused by this current leadership? Now, I've seen there are other people who are running for prime minister, and they say how much that the current leadership isn't good. The problem that I personally have with them is that they're not telling me what they would do differently. They're not telling me what they would do that is actually different than what we're seeing now. To say you would do things differently is great. You have to put pen to paper. You have to put an actual plan. Us Anglos, we come from countries where usually there's an election based on policy. Hold on one second. I think that's enough.